So a couple of days ago, I released a version of Carly Rae Jepsen's Run Away With Me for 17-piece ensemble. In that arrangement, we went all out with strings and horns and 7-string gents and all the stuff. I thought it would be fun to talk a little bit about how the whole thing was conceptualized and some of the more specific techniques that went into it. For example, number 1, sidechain emulation. Sidechaining is a popular electronic music production technique where the audio of one track is ducked or made quieter by the kick drum. So what you get is this kind of pulsing effect. Now, you don't actually need a sidechain compressor to get that kind of vibe. You could, for example, get a similar kind of pulsing effect with a guitar and a volume pedal that you time to open when the kick drum is not playing.
Chorus of Run Away With Me is going to be like a fake sidechain, which sounds like this.
Right.
Amazing volume pedal.
I think actually on the part it says the Shub sidechain.
Oh, yeah.
Does it say that?
What does this pedal do?
This one.
You say it gives you that crunch?
Wind instruments can also get a similar kind of effect. They could, for example, play long tones, but articulate with a little bit more air on the offbeats to get that kind of sucking Hoover effect. So we're gonna be rehearsing some horns.
I think not tonguing the start of the note, but using tonguing the stop is the best.
Verse 2, and ready, and. These individual elements might sound a little ridiculous out of context, but I think they sound quite nice in the context of the groove. It's an example of the aesthetic of electronic music influencing arranging techniques for acoustic instruments. Pretty sweet. Anyway, I know most people don't care about that. What they really care about are those sweet, delicious jazz chords. So let's talk about that. 2, unusual modal mixture. A lot of the melodies of modern pop songs will center around a single note. There's an infamous video essay that calls this phenomenon the death of melody. And while I can't really argue for or against why this kind of aesthetic thing might be good or bad, I can definitively say that from an arranging standpoint, it's kind of a fun thing. Because if you stick on one note, like the chorus to Run Away With Me, you can do some interesting things. It sticks on the note B flat.
Oh, baby. Take me to the feeling.
Because the melody note B flat is the 5th in the key of E flat, it doesn't actually give us any information onto whether or not this song is in minor or major. It's in E flat minor, by the way, but the B flat does not tell us that. Because of this, while we're insistently sticking on the note B flat, we can go back and forth between harmonies in E flat minor and E flat major.
Oh, baby. Take me.
Common practice, most of the time modal mixture would take the form of, say in the key of E flat, the 4 chord A flat, resolving to the 4 minor chord A flat minor, and finally resolving to the tonic 1. This, back in the day, would almost always happen in major keys. So if you want a little bit more of a modern aesthetic, in the key of E flat minor, try borrowing chords from E flat major. Immediately, you get more of that sort of vibe. Anyway, speaking of harmonic vibes, let's talk about this chord. 3. This chord. This chord is a D flat major 7 in 3rd inversion, so the major 7th is actually voiced in the bass, a C. It can sound pretty dissonant and crunchy when it's voiced like this because of the distance between the C on the bottom and this D flat up here, which is the interval of a minor 9th. Old school jazz arrangers would call this a prime dissonance, and it's something to be treated with a lot of care. There's ways of mitigating that dissonance though. For example, you could play the C an octave lower, and all of a sudden that distance doesn't feel quite as intense as it does up here. How you voice a chord, where you place the individual notes of it, really affects the emotional characteristics of it. For example, the notes A, B, C, when played in order, have a lot of tension to them, but when you spread them out, there's a much different emotional characteristic. There's more warmth, it feels more open and maybe hopeful. Context also matters quite a lot. Where the harmony is traveling to will affect your perception of the dissonance and the feelings that it contains. This is the chord out of context, and this is the chord in context. sound of a string quartet just sounds so good. Which brings me to point 4. 4, right for string quartet. Because the sound of a full string section or a full string orchestra sounds so massive and so huge, most sample packs and string libraries and string emulation that is used in modern production aims to create the feeling of a full string orchestra, which is cool, but there's something about the intimacy and the immediacy of a string quartet, just 4 string players playing in a room, that I think sounds absolutely awesome.
Cool. Sounds good.
More legato. When
yeah.
everybody drops
That's
out,
true.
only that.
Hey guys, sorry, before we go on, can we just do another take from 132 to the end?
Hold on to me, I never wanna let you go. Over the weekend, we can tell the world to go.
Granted, I didn't actually use this orchestration of just vocals and string quartet in the final arrangement, but it's something that I've been wanting to at least rant about a little bit on this channel for a while. I love string quartets, and I love that intimacy and that particular feeling that comes with them, provided, of course, they play in tune. These players, by the way, played amazingly well in tune. They were only the best, hired by my fine folks at Patreon. Thanks, guys. Patreon. Anyway, let's talk 808s. 5, 808s. Okay, so one thing that I've noticed in the past couple years in trap and hip hop music is the use of 808s, tuned kick drums, as literal bass lines. In other words, the sound of the kick drum is being tuned up and down to create chord progressions through songs. Historically, bass players have tried to lock in with the kick drum, but in this case, they are the same thing. One thing that I've had a lot of fun with recently, and I think works really well, is assigning the sound of an 808 kick drum to a keyboard and playing it like a synth bass. Now, I haven't seen a lot of people do this yet live, play 808s on a keyboard, but hopefully that will change because it's a lot of fun to do, especially with all those effects. Now, speaking of effects, let's talk about that Autotune. 6, Autotune. So out of any kind of modern sound, Autotune definitely seems to be the most polarizing. This level of vitriol is really interesting to me. Do people hate it because it sounds like a robot? Probably not, because the same people would be just fine with Peter Frampton and his talk box. Do people hate it because they feel like they're being deceived by somebody's vocal ability, their ability to sing? I don't think that's it either, because it doesn't sound anything like a human, and besides, Kate Steinberg can sing great.
Just millennial whoops all day long.
Run away with me, run away with me.
I honestly don't know where the hate comes from, because other generational timbres like the 808 kick drum, for example, don't get quite as much pushback. Anyway, that's my little rant on Autotune. If you want to actually get the sound, you're going to need to turn the retune speed down to like 0 milliseconds. That way, any slight deviation in pitch, including things like vibrato, are tracked as a pitch correction.
I'll be a sinner in secret.
You can also tune the formants, which are the natural resonant harmonic peaks of the vocal cords, down a little bit, giving you kind of this weird detuned effect.
Take me to the beyond.
To get that big pop sound, you're gonna have the singer sing a couple of vocal doubles where they sing the exact same thing and then pan those tracks hard left and right.
Baby, take me to the beyond. I'll be a sinner in secret.
And yeah, then you have a vibe that people seem to hate. Anyway, number 7. Syncopate stuff in 12/8. 12/8 and other compound time signatures are rather uncommon in modern pop music. And when they are used, they're used to evoke a doo-wop 50s sort of vibe, like Rihanna's Love on the Brain, for example. Carly Rae Jepsen's Run Away With Me has a slightly different sort of feel to it, and because of that, we can explore syncopations that are fairly rare in modern pop music. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For example, this version of 12/8 is felt in 4 evenly spaced pulses, which makes it feel fairly normal, but each pulse is divided into groups of 3. Within each pulse, the second of the 3 subdivisions, what we might call the po of triplet, can have a really strange feeling to it sometimes.
Let's make sure we're all hitting the second eighth note of 2.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out the rhythmic solfege for triplets.
Pole.
It's a pole. Tripole. The pole of two.
It's not a triplet.
It's a tripole.
Chipotle.
Just
It's like Chipotle.
Chipotle.
You guys like this shit. Full measure.
So, to me, these syncopations by themselves sound a little strange and out of place. However, add in that vocal melody, the one which is very insistent on the B flat, and the syncopations start to have this kind of response feeling to them. The syncopations are kind of like a conversation that's happening with the vocal melody.
Oh, baby, take me to the feeling. I'll be a singer in secret when the lights go out.
So I hope you enjoyed these thick arranging techniques. These are just a couple of the ones that I used on the Run Away With Me arrangement last week. Definitely go check out the full arrangement of Run Away With Me. Link is in the description where you can hear these techniques in action and actually give context to whatever it is that I've been rambling about for this whole video. If you enjoy what I do here on this channel, please consider donating to my Patreon, because it's the patrons over at my Patreon that really allow this channel to be what it is and allow me to make this content week after week. I'm very much indebted to everybody who has donated. I have uploaded the score to Run Away With Me up on my Patreon, so definitely go check that out. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching.
Peace.